Tim. Wanted to ask you, and speaking of scheme, obviously the big story of the week for the bye week for Nebraska was bringing in Dana Holgorsen. Are you, I guess, don't want to taint your opinion at all, or with a leading question here. How did you process that information in real time in terms of what you thought he would be able to bring to Nebraska?
More than anything, like the way me and Steve kind of talked about it when the news first broke was at the end of the day, Nebraska needs to be able to put up more points, and Dana Holgersen's had success putting up points. There's been times when he's had a good quarterback that he's putting up, these world-beating offenses and playing good balanced football. And then there's times where he kind of comes back, and even him, quote unquote, coming back down to earth is still a better than average offense that's putting up points. So. More than anything, I think where I'm at is I don't know exactly how much of an impact he'll have over these next 3 games, but I do know at the very least he can help sequence some of these plays together, help the offense get a better feel for situations, and maybe even add some wrinkles and help Nebraska get into some layup type situations where they have some easy answers. And they can give kind of Dylan this additional, we've talked about the Rolodex, an additional Rolodex of, hey, you see this look pre-snap, change to this. You see this pre-snap, change to this. Like little tweaks that give the offense something to fall back on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think with Coach Rule, clearly none of this happens by accident. And I think it's interesting, if nothing else ironic, that the background of Coach Holgorsen is with wide receivers to start. He clearly understands offense. And with Phil Snow, it's his experience with secondary and kind of how that goes. Tutelage is one thing, teaching is another, but just simply having guidance, I think, can be a really good thing with a fresh set of eyes. That's kind of how I look at both these, at least temporary additions.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Offensively, I think I've kind of said this too, and it's like I understand, like there are bigger picture issues with the offensive identity and stuff like that. But I mean, week after week, there's some obviously discouraging stuff from Marcus Satterfield, but the plays are there. There are successful plays in the playbook. It's, for me, the issue has always been the sequencing of it, which is the same thing going back to Scott Frost. Like it's more so how you build plays off each other and how you sequence and drive together. I don't think Nebraska does a very good job of that right now, and that's where having an outside voice can come in and help, kind of figure some of that out and give you some guidance on, okay, you're in this situation on first down, you put yourself in this situation on second down, here's how you respond. And then, like just giving some additional like advice and having a better set of eyes. I think ultimately it'll help, but we won't find out until we see it on the field, because I do want to see exactly how much of an impact he's having on the offense right now.
Tim, do you think that I know people have been sort of freaking out a little bit about, Coach Rule says we want to run the ball, then we bring in an air raid guy, and people, all that narrative. But do you think the air raid concept, some of those quick hitters, could be used as sort of some variations on those hot reads, on those blitzes? Because that's been a big issue, especially in the last couple of games. People been heating up Dylan. And it seems like the only check with me that ever gets called or that he goes to is sort of that horizontal passing game to the outside to the receivers. Do you think Holgorsen might be able to help out with some of that, considering all the quick hitter concepts that those offenses typically have?
Yeah, absolutely. You would think so. You would hope so. And you look at, yeah, that's my biggest issue right now with Dylan, and that is not being able to take the hots and not having the hots really available. I noticed it last game, and it's been kind of that for a couple of games now. Maybe it's the way Nebraska's designing it or what, but it always feels like the hot or the check down route is to the weak side of the field. It's the running back releasing to the flat, and it's the last read Dylan has to come back to. It's a tough throw to make, and it's one he made early in the year, and then feel like the offense was like, okay, well, if he can make that throw, let's just keep that as the check down. That's not an easy throw. It's one of those things that he has to take a quick glance, throw it across his body, across the field. If there's a quarterback that's willing to jump, he can jump that and house that pretty easily. So you need more hot routes. You need more answers offensively. And yeah, like you're saying with Dana, People make stuff about the run game too. Like, go look at his numbers. Go look at the guys that have run for him. He's had a 1,400 rusher before. He's had multiple 1,000-yard rushes before. He's closer to 60-40 pass to run, but I don't think necessarily shifting to that's the worst thing in the world. Like, you have a quarterback that can push the ball downfield. You do have a stable of backs that can carry that type of load. And when you look at the offenses that are having success in the Big Ten right now, with the exception of Michigan in recent years, every other really successful offense in this conference, Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, they're all running a version of what Dana Holgorsen is running.
Tim, I got a question, and this is one of those where I'm supposed to be the guy because I've done it, but I want a different set of eyes, right? See, it's real life practical
perspective
application. TV, I got to talk running backs here because I know I used to joke about it, but clearly it's a thing, right? I'm like, we don't like the running backs, and we're this, they're that. How much do you, like from the 30,000 foot view? How much do you think you talk about like a feature guy or the guy or a guy? How much of it do you think do you look for styles to complement plays being called?
Yeah. I mean, in this day, like, I think what you're finding is it's real hard to find.
Do you look at a guy and you're like, oh, he's a gap scheme guy, or oh, he's a power guy. He's a like. Do you
right? Yeah. You're looking for those guys now. Like, that's my thing. Like I look at backs now and I'm like, okay, well, you look at him in high school and you watch him run and you're like, okay, well, this guy does a better job of reading through blocks. This guy doesn't. This guy has smoother hips that can bounce in and out, on these like, yeah, you're looking for guys that can run differently. And yeah, like, I mean, Dante Dowdle's one of those guys. Doesn't do a great job of reading, but if it's just downhill runs with an open read, he's got it. You know what I mean? Like, when he's got a runway, he can cook. And then you see a guy like Ramir and Emmett, who, like, Ramir and Emmett specifically, I think is a bit scheme proof. Ramir, is more of that that zone read type or zone scheme type back. Styles make everything right now. And I think what you're realizing too is, and I think Nebraska's doing a good job of this, Bartel's doing a good job of this looking ahead to 26 and 27, is building out the board with different types of backs that do different things well. So you have these guys for whatever, because right now, I think a lesson that a lot of teams are learning is finding that bell cow back is so difficult. And when you have that guy, you got to hold, like, the two that come to mind right now, Ashton Genty and Caleb Johnson at Iowa. And both those guys weren't highly pursued prospects out of high school. Both those guys weren't world beaters in high school. They just happened to have success in the scheme and have continued to improve to the point that they are, and now they are future NFL backs. You have to get lucky sometimes. Louisville right now has a freshman in Isaac Brown. That there was a time Nebraska was sniffing around that recruitment. They just happened to get lucky with that guy that fits the scheme really well and has had some success. For some guys, it just takes clicking in a scheme now. And that's kind of what I've realized with backs is sometimes a guy like doesn't really look all that like dangerous coming out of high school. And then he gets into a scheme that better fits his running style. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, he looks faster than he ever did out of high school with the ball in his hands.
Tim, somebody asked DB a good question about, whether he felt there was a disconnect between the running backs coach and the offensive coordinator. I kind of want to take that a step further because a couple years ago, we saw this disconnect between the offensive coordinator in Mark Whipple and the offensive line coach in Donnie Raiola. Do you think part of what we're seeing, whether it's the struggles in the running game or the struggles with the offense in general, has to do with, hey, this individual unit is actually being coached well and they could do the right thing, but either the plays that are being called for the certain running backs or the plays that are being called for what the offensive line is good at aren't quite meshing up the way they need to truly have a coherent offense?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think if you were to put EJ Bartel, like, you put some truth serum into him, I think he'd want a lot more under center looks, a lot more eye formation looks. And
I agree. I completely agree with that. That's smart.
Especially with who he's got in the backfield right now. Like, I think he wants more of that. And I think, again, like, if you're looking at Nebraska right now, too, they may not have the line necessarily to hold up for it, but that's kind of a way, like, hypothetically, if you were just to look at the pieces on this roster and say, hey, how do you build an offense out of this? early on. Under center looks is the way to go. You like, with some of these wide receivers that can win some of these one-on-one matchups deep, with some of these big receivers that can stretch the field downfield, with the speed you have in Ja'Cory Barney and Jalen Lloyd and Isaiah Nair, and some of the tight ends you have that can do stuff in the passing game. Like, you would have thought before the season, or at least I would have thought before the season, we would have seen more under center looks.
Mm. Well, Tim, if you're looking at the complementary stuff like edge run game versus downhill, all the things that we talked about, right? Power, counter, and then you look at what's happening on the perimeter. Do you feel like you would be? Is there a way or like a style that you would run, that you would use to run the ball that you think plays to your strengths?
Yeah,
like
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Do you use Bonner more? Do you use Bork? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, because your coach has said, hey, listen, perimeter blocking has been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a problem all year. He said it multiple weeks in a row. Can we get away from perimeter run game and still be okay? Because then I only asked the question because you talked about getting underneath center, two back looks, downhill. I mean, that may have to be the answer in the short term.
Instead of pushing the edges, like push the seam, like run directly between the B gaps, run directly between the C gaps. And when you're getting outside, instead of pushing it all the way out to the sideline, because your receivers can't block, run up the seam. You have the alley. The alley it can be open. There's some additional yards to be had there. I'd like to see Nebraska do a little more of that. And something that I think was frustrating for me was a lot of times when we've seen the team prior to this bye week, line up under center, it's always been this okay, they know exactly what they're going to do. They don't have any real answers beyond what they're running out of this, but it does work. They're able to run when they have a fullback. Obviously, you don't have Liebentritt the rest of the season, but I did think they had something if they could build out more from that I formation under center look. I thought there was more to be had there that I think they left out on the table. And now, with Liebentritt not there, you don't have that true fullback in there. So everyone kind of knows what you're running when you trot out an Elijah Judy or a Ty Robinson out there.
Tim, do you like the looks where and obviously I think they've only done it with Heinrich Harburg as the second back, but do you like the looks where Dowdell kind of lines up as in that fullback spot, and then they've got a second ball carrier behind him? Because, DB and I were talking earlier, if you don't have threat of QB run game, sometimes you need that extra ball carrier to keep people honest. Would you like to see more of that with a Dowdell, and then maybe whether it's Harburg or anybody else as that second back?
I should probably chart, because it's not that many plays, Tim. We should probably chart where a true running back lines up at the fullback spot.
I think Dowdell's gotten it every time. I think he's gotten the handoff every time.
I think, and maybe whether it's him or not, just charting the success of the run play.
But I think, is that something you think can be more successful in a more variety of ways than they've used it so far?
Like you're saying, I think we'd have to, because I think they've run that play. I think if you actually were to count across the season, you could probably count on your fingers the amount of times they've run that specific look. And I've always been waiting for, hey, is there a counter where you fake the handoff to Dante and then you pitch it back to Heinrich, who winds up for a throw downfield? I feel like that's something that you would feel is in the bag. That's an answer to everything they've run so far. But I do like the handoff to Dowdell, because I think it changes up the timing a little bit for the defense too. That's so much of, and DB, I know you can talk on this too, but so much of run game success, if you can't really block up front and you can't do it, you have to take advantage of timing. You have to take advantage of, slow mesh handoffs, or, or a quick handoff or whatever, just something to attack them and make them a little uncomfortable, and change the timing of the defense a little bit too, and have them be a little worried about when exactly the ball's getting to the running back.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Tim, I just still on that under center thing real quick. Do you think, because one of the things I've been sort of frustrated with is it doesn't seem like the play action pass game has been very effective. Do you think going from under center gives a little bit more pause to the defense in those play action pass looks?
Yeah, I would say so. And
Ohio State.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He got underneath center, then set, and they had shown run.
Mm-hmm.
And nope, Louisiana Bayou.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like it's. I just wish they would do it more. Again, I think for a lot of this, it's like we're talking about it, and it's like I don't think we have enough context to necessarily talk about it because they don't run it enough. Like that's what's frustrating for me is like coming out of last game too. I'm like the answers are clearly there. You have these plays in your playbook. You know these work, and I understand for you see these as tendency breakers, but at a certain point, you got to realize the offense is running the tendency breakers better than they are like the bread and butter stuff.
Tim,
yeah.
that's pretty good. I was like, maybe your tendency breakers are your bread and butter, and you don't realize it. Tim, we appreciate the time as always, and we will talk to you again next week.
Good stuff. See you tonight, TV, potentially.
Yes, sir. See you. Good luck.